Welcome to Sausage on a Fork, a podcast dedicated to the UK's longest running children's drama programme, Grange Hill. My name's Neil, and in each episode I'll interview a former cast member about their life before, during and after their time on the programme. The world of Grange Hill was shocked and saddened recently when we heard the news that George Armstrong had passed away. George played Alan Humphries in the first 5 series of Grange Hill and all 3 series of Tucker's Luck. Before appearing in Grange Hill, George attended the Talia Conti Stage School and appeared on our screens in episodes of Just William and Honky Tonk Heroes. On February the 8th, 1978, the first episode of Grange Hill was broadcast, and Alan was one of the first pupils we met, forming Grange Hill's holy trinity of Tucker, Alan and Benny. In the first episode, his character was called Alan Turner. By episode 2, he was called Alan Hargreaves, and by series 2, his name had changed to Alan Humphries, meaning Alan is possibly the only male character in television history to have had 3 different surnames. During his time at Grange Hill, Alan became a firm favourite of the Grange Hill fans, due to his friendship with Tucker and Benny, and the fact that he would often look out for the other pupils and wasn't afraid to use his size and strength when it was necessary. This was shown in my own personal favourite moment during a rugby lesson with Mr. Baxter. As Bullet ran through the line of pupils, knocking each one to the floor, Alan grabbed him by the legs and floored him, with Bullet uttering a reluctant, "Well done, lad," as Alan stood over him laughing. Other favourite moments of the fans include Alan showing his judo prowess at any opportunity, the bench race in the swimming pool, jumping on the bus with Tucker and Benny during the cross-country run, his impression of Eamon Andrews in the school review, and his part in one of Grange Hill's most famous storylines, which saw Tucker and Alan smuggle Tommy onto the coach to take him on the school trip to France. Alan was also one half of Grange Hill's first couple when he became the boyfriend of Susie McMahon, a pairing that seemed to be an unlikely one, but one that the fans really loved. After leaving Grange Hill and Tucker's Luck, George remained in the industry but moved backstage, working in technical theatre, lighting, production and design management. This episode of Sausage on a Fork features interviews and messages from George Armstrong's fellow cast members who have shared their memories of Grange Hill's gentle giant. I've been joined by Vinnie Mann, who played Anthony Karamanopoulos. Vinnie, if you could just tell us sort of your first memories of George.
My first memories of George, I think it must have been just around or just after his 16th birthday, which was when I joined the cast. And it's a silly memory, really, but I know that he just turned 16, which meant he didn't need a chaperone,
Right?
And he could smoke cigarettes as well. So, and that was quite a thing in those days. It was very fashionable to smoke cigarettes, and I think he felt very grown up. But other than that, he was a very friendly guy. He was very warm and welcoming, especially to new cast members, because I joined in the second series. So even though it was still with the original cast, I came a little bit later than some of the others. But yeah, he was a very nice, very friendly, very welcoming, down to earth. What you see is what you get. That's how I found him completely. He was nice to work with.
Yeah, because obviously you've said there you joined in series 2. Had you watched him in Grange Hill before you joined the program?
Well, I think we were filming while it was being aired, so so I was kind of watching the odd one, when I had a chance.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I was there, kind of thing. So I was filming it and I was living it rather than watching TV.
Yeah. So. And you were in it for 2 series 2 and series 3, and you obviously got to film a few scenes with George as well. Was he one of those people that was sort of easy to work with?
It was one of those things. I think a lot of us would just, while we were rehearsing, because the lines were sort of shortish, so we could kind of learn them on the hop and then just film them. But he was very natural. You know, his lines just came off the tongue as if it was something he was saying.
Yeah.
But I do remember filming in the shed with him when he was trying to teach us to smoke cigarettes, and I mean, we all smoked cigarettes then anyway, so we try to pretend that we were coughing when we weren't really. I don't smoke anymore.
Great. Okay. And so then off camera, the stories I've read this week from cast members, everyone just said sort of he's just the nicest person that you could have met.
He really was, yeah. He was very easy to talk to. He was very friendly, an outgoing guy, confident, and just he was very engaging, you know. So with who he's with, he always felt very comfortable. You could tell that, and he was comfortable in his own skin, I would say. Like when we went to do there was an episode where we went out into the country. Quite a lot of filming, so we were on location for quite a while, and we would get these coaches, and it was just like being on a school bus with classmates and just having a laugh on this bus. The chaperones would all sit at the front, and we'd all be on the back seats and mucking about and just having fun. Yeah.
Brilliant. Obviously, of course, your character in the program wasn't on it for too long, but George, if I remember rightly, George was in those scenes with you at the shopping centre. Now, I remember you saying that the shopping centre, it was a working shopping centre, wasn't it, when you were filming there?
Yeah, it was the Arndale Centre in Wandsworth.
Knowing what was happening, or what was going to happen, did you still sort of have a like? Were you still sort of laughing and joking about it, or?
Yeah, we were. Yeah, George, Todd. I think the other guy's name was Tony.
Right.
George, Todd, Tony, and me were. Yeah, we were in the shopping centre there. It was fun because that was such a fun scene to do.
Yeah.
Especially when we were hiding from Bullet Baxter in the toilet.
In the toilets.
I guess as a child, I didn't really get what it looked like for him getting caught by the security guard. But obviously worked that out later, and that was quite clever. Clever writing, clever direction, really well put together. Yeah, it was funny. But it was nice to be. Yeah, I got on well with Todd. I got on well with George, and the other guy Tony I just met. But we did a good few scenes together. So it was fun. It was good. Yeah.
So then, what would you say would be your lasting memory of George?
My lasting memory, well, I suppose that's got to be seeing him at one of the reunions that I went to. There was one in Leicester Square. Excuse me. And I'd not seen him in years. And he was one of the first. Him and Paul McCarthy came straight up, and he was so friendly, so welcoming, and hung around with him for most of the evening, really, because they were my gang, the people that I hung out with. So I knew them very well. And when you see old friends that you were at school with, it's like there's no airs or graces or anything. You can't pretend to be something different now that you're older and this or that. It's just we all knew who we were. We had that instant bond and connection, and George was the one who came up to me first. I was sort of I walked in a little bit late, and I was looking out for who I knew, and there George was. He came over, and Paul McCarthy. And it was really, really nice to see them again, and to get some photos of old friends. Because you wonder what happened to them, and Facebook's a wonderful thing now. It's put people back in touch, but that was kind of in those early days. So it was nice to. It was great to see him, and my lasting memory is what a lovely man. That's the best thing I can say. What a lovely, generous, friendly, honest, and sincere person he was. My heart really goes out to his family, and those who he loved and left behind. They must be devastated, truly devastated.
Well,
Yeah.
Vinny, thank you so much for coming on and telling us your memories and sharing them with us of George.
It's my pleasure. Yeah, thank you, Neil.
I have now been joined by Mark Baxter, who played Dwayne Orpington. Mark, just tell us your first memories of George Armstrong.
Mine are vivid, very vivid memories of the first time that I actually got to meet George. It was our very first day of filming.
Right.
And I think I've sort of mentioned this before. Our very first scenes were with what we class as the big three.
Right.
So the first filming scenes that we did were on location. And in series 3, I'm sure many of you would remember that one of the main characters in our year was Benny's brother,
right.
which was Michael.
Yeah.
Played by Mark Bishop. And the very first scene that we got to film on Grange Hill was where Dwayne thinks that Michael's being bullied, doesn't realise that it's Benny's brother, and so he goes in sort of, and the first thing he does, he has an altercation with George, and before you know it, I'm having a scrap with George, and then it all comes to fruition, and to do a scene like that in your, the first morning of filming with like I say, with these three guys that had literally made the program. Let's be honest, along with Michelle, obviously as Trisha and Vince as Doyle. They were the mainstays of the first two series. It was pretty daunting, but at the same time, the guys made it so easy for us, and it was something that I will cherish forever, really.
Yeah, because you were in 3 series of Grange Hill with George, weren't you?
With George, my first 3.
Yeah,
3, 4, and 5.
So, you've said there, like, it must have been something to go from seeing him on the telly, and then all of a sudden you saw him in this scene, and you're actually having a scrap with him, knowing that you're probably going to get pummeled as well. To be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously Dwayne hadn't watched Grange Hill the year before with the judo scenes and things like that. He decided to go. Yeah, that was probably Dwayne all over, to be perfectly honest. But like I say, and the nice thing was that I'd worked obviously in the industry before, so I'd sort of met famous people. But when you meet famous people when you're younger, they tend to be older than you are.
Yeah.
Right. So I'd worked with Dick Emery and Ryan O'Neill and people like that. But when you meet somebody that's of your age and is killing it on BBC One, it's a bit different. You know what I mean? And you do get a bit starstruck. And to be fair, I was. It was immense.
And so, other than that one, the fight there, do you have any other sort of favourite scenes that you filmed with George?
I mean, not really, because basically our years were mainly kept apart quite a lot.
Yeah.
We brought in, but the thing with the beauty with Grange Hill, and most programs when you're filming, is obviously it's not shot in sequence.
Right.
It's shot in different aspects of it all the time. So you would still be on set on the same day, but filming different episodes at the same time. So you'd still get to be friends and still have that sort of camaraderie, without having to be on the screen all the time. It was, but I will always remember that scene because obviously, like I said, it's sort of the breaking point for me, of becoming a character in one of the best TV shows, Children Ever.
And so, you sort of said there because he was in a different year group on the show. Did you knock about with them, like, sort of off camera?
Well, not really. The thing was that we all sort of had our own age groups to sort of knock about with, and George was in the same position as I was to some respects, whereas he was 3 years older than the role he was playing. Yeah. Right. So as I was with my year, so it was very different. It was quite a strange dynamic, really.
Yeah.
But we'd all come together and we'd all have on location, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But whenever you were George's company, you knew that you were in for laughter.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
And just he was just the kindest person that you could wish to meet.
Yeah. And then so obviously, you both left the program, but then in later years you obviously remain friends. Did you stay friends from the program?
It was sort of later on, to be honest. Yeah. It was later on, and because everybody drifts off, don't they? And they have their, they go and live their lives and things like that. And so George, like I say, drifted out. I drifted out of the entertainment business and came back in again.
Uh-huh.
And then we met up, obviously through the charity, and it was as if we hadn't been away from each other really, and it was just a joy because the guy, he, like I said before, he just brought a smile to everybody's face whenever he had a smile that did that to you anyway,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, one of the things that I've seen since he passed is just that he was just the nicest fella that you could have wished to have met.
And you'll get no different from me,
Right.
obviously. It was the one thing that you'll find with a lot of the cast was that it was a long time ago, right? Yeah. It was a long time ago for a lot of us, and even back then, we all had our own kind of people that we knocked about with. And, it's life. You don't get on with everybody all the time, although George seemed to manage it.
Right.
And that's, and that's just, it didn't matter whether you had been in the series with him, whether you'd met him at a gathering afterwards, at one of the reunions. You could have been 20 years apart. And George was the same. Everybody loved George.
Brilliant. So just one final thing then, Mark. What will be your lasting memory of George Armstrong?
Oh gosh, I've got so many. His compassion.
Yeah.
His he's just a joy to be with. Even though he was a Tottenham fan, just so there are so many things, and I think that to a certain extent, Todd gets a lot of the accolades because obviously he's gone on to have a fantastic career, but make no bones about it, without George and Terry, and then later on Paul, obviously because Paul came into Tucker's Luck with the guys, I'm doubtful whether the program would have been as fondly remembered as it is without those guys.
Definitely. Well, Mark, thanks so much for coming on. It's been great that you've come on.
Yeah.
And been able to give us some of your memories of George. So once again, thank you very much. Cheers.
No problem. Thanks, Neil. Thanks a lot.
Nadia Chambers, who played Annette Fairman, has sent this message with her memories of George.
Sadly, I didn't get to do a lot of scenes with George, but I distinctly remember what a lovely, kind person he was. Just really, really lovely. I was lucky enough to see him at the reunion back in 2018. So I talked to him quite a bit then, and we also appeared on Loose Women together. We were sitting in the audience, and I remember how nervous I was, just being on live television. And he was so sweet, sitting next to me, going, "Don't worry about it." And what a lovely human being, and he'll be greatly missed.
So I've now been joined by Paula Ambland, who played Claire Scott. And Paula, if you can tell us your first memories of George.
Okay, so my first memories of George wasn't actually on Grange Hill.
Right.
We went to Italia Conti together. And so I met George on my first day at school there.
Wow.
When I was 11.
Right.
He was just such a nice guy.
Yeah. From my own memories of sort of joining high school. Obviously, you know, your school was obviously would have been a lot smaller than like the secondary school or high school that I went to. But did the older kids sort of bother with the younger ones then?
Oh yeah, because
Right.
literally there was only like about 10 people in a class.
Right.
I think there was 150 kids in the whole school.
Right. Wow.
And it was a townhouse in Clapham.
Uh-huh.
And so you know, you wouldn't necessarily, if you had a drama class or a singing class, you wouldn't necessarily just be in your class.
Right,
It would
I get
be
you.
mixed ages. So we kind of, yeah, so nobody really sort of like said, oh, well, you weren't in my class or whatever, because literally we were just all there in that big building on our own.
Right. And did you find that you were, because obviously Grange Hill had been on the telly for 2 or 3 years when you joined the school. Did you find yourself, you know, starstruck by him at all?
I didn't, to be honest with you, because there were lots of very famous people there.
Right, okay,
I was a bit starstruck by Bonnie Langford, but
right.
No, I mean, not really, because it was packed with people, and I guess I knew what I was getting myself into, right. And I was never really that kind of person that would be kind of starstruck with anybody, really.
Yeah, I mean, you just mentioned Bonnie Langford there, and of course George was in Just William.
Yes,
which Bonnie Langford was in as well. Okay, so then let's talk about Grange Hill then, because obviously we've mentioned the fact that you were in series 4 and 5 at the same time as George. Yeah, again, the older kids, did they sort of like did he like look after you when you went there?
I wouldn't go as far as say look after us. Yeah, that's extending the truth a bit, Neil, really.
Right,
but,
okay.
Certainly have a laugh with us.
Yeah.
Encourage us to get up to mischief, yes. Look after us, no.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Okay. Now, I don't know if you had sort of many scenes with George at all.
Not very many, no. So our friendship really was more sort of off screen and at school rather than on Grange Hill.
Right. Okay. But I'm right in thinking that George was involved with the school review.
Oh, Neil, I don't bloody remember, for God's sake.
Because I just remember him with.
I think he may have been actually thinking back. But you are really testing my memory now.
I remember him doing an impression of Eamon Andrews from This Is Your Life, the Irish accent and stuff. Right. And so you said more of your memories were sort of off screen, off camera. So everyone said sort of, you know, just how nice he was. But, you know, can you just give us a bit more of an insight into, you know?
Yeah, very silly.
Right.
Great sense of humor. Always made us laugh. Always had a smile on his face. Yeah. I never, you know, some people you'll say, oh gosh, you know, oh, he or she's not in a very good mood today. Never did I see George anything but happy, smiley, breezy, and just very, very kind. And yeah, I'm pretty devastated by the loss of him, really. And yeah, it's been a bit of a tough week. Obviously, I've sent my condolences to his brother Adam, who also was at Italia Conti with me. You know, so it's not only the cast of Grange Hill that are absolutely, you know, just broken-hearted, really, but it's, you know, I've had lots of people, my old schoolmates, contact me as well. So it's a very, very, very sad week. He did fight for, you know, many years, and he was really kind, you know, because, you know, so he got sick, and then he was kind of like in remission, and I got sick, and then he got sick again, and then I got sick again, and, you know, it was kind of like the on off, you know. But so we didn't see each other as much as we would have normally done because I loved meeting him for like, he'd come over and take me out for dinner or we'd have a laugh at other people's expense. Won't mention any names again. But we'd always have a giggle, never nasty, but, you know, always have a really good laugh and about old times. Yeah. But sadly, you know, it was either me or him that was ill. And, you know, but, even though he'd gone through it, he was so kind to me when I was going through chemo and everything. It's just, I'll never forget that. His kind words and thoughtfulness and everything really spurred me on, and his fight. And I mean, the other thing is that, I moved into like this new build house, and I've got to tell you, my electrics here are absolutely shocking. And, you know, things had happened and I'll be like, what is going on here? So George came over a few times and he likes to say to fiddle with my electrics. So he came over, you know, he used to come over and do bits and pieces, and he put all new sockets in, and honestly amazing. But I had these two lights in my living room, which didn't really work. And I just said to him, can you take them down? And so he taped them up with his blue tape, and they're actually still there with this blue tape around. And I said to my daughter the other night, I said, you know, I could never put lights up there again. I'm never touching that blue tape. And she said, oh my God, I know, right? Yeah. So yeah, it's just very, very, I don't really know. I'm lost. PAB's never usually lost for words, but on this occasion, really, it's just so sad. And and I think also because like we've been on like kind of a bit of a cancer journey together, for him to go is just I don't know what to say, really.
Okay, so can I just ask you then, what would be your lasting memory of George?
Always turning up on my doorstep with a big grin on his face.
Yeah.
He'd always say, the workers are a bit hungry, or the workers need a cup of tea. Make him a tea, and I'd make him a nice sandwich, and we'd just chat and laugh, and he'd fiddle with my electrics all day. And just laugh, the laughter, really, and the kindness, the always thinking of other people rather than himself. And you can't really say that about many people. People do say it, right, about people, but it's not necessarily the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. But when it comes to George, it really is. I can't, you know, the saying, he didn't have a bad bone in his body. That really was George. He was just 100% good. And it's really devastating news, really. And we've lost another Grange Hill legend, really. You know, I mean, I've obviously the cast and everything are like devastated, but I've been watching social media over this week, and the outpouring of love from the fans as well. I mean, they astonish me as well, because they're so loyal. And I think that's another key word about George: loyal. Yeah, very loyal friend. You knew where you stuck with him, and he really didn't have a bad word to say about anybody. I have a little swear.
Well, Paula, thanks for coming. I know it's really obvious how much you loved him and how much you thought of him. But so thank you very much for giving us your time.
Thank you. And let's, think of George. If everybody can just, when they listen to this podcast, just think of George and cherish his memory, really. And say a little prayer for him, and, wish him to rest in peace, really. God love him. But thank you so much, Neil.
My name is Lee MacDonald. I played Zamo in Grange Hill. I was devastated to hear the news of the passing of George Armstrong. He was such a lovely guy. I did so many scenes with him back in the day, and he was such a great actor. He will be missed by so many. My thoughts go to his family. Lots of love, Lee MacDonald.
I've now been joined by Erkan Mustafa, who played Roland Browning. And Erkan, if you can tell us your first memories of George.
I believe my first memories of George would have been watching the show, especially that his character did judo, and I also participated in judo.
Right.
So watching it, I could relate to someone of his size and my size doing judo. I first met him probably a couple of weeks into my first year on the show, where him and Tucker's character come in, and they find me hiding in a boiler house, if I remember.
Oh yeah.
And that was probably the first and only scene I probably did with George. And then I didn't have any association with him as he was leaving the show. And after that, and I think we probably met again, probably on This Morning.
Right.
I think he was on that with us when they asked us to go on This Morning, a big group of us. And possibly I met him yet again, probably later. I'm not too sure. I know it was on BBC World Breakfast News or something like that. Maybe on the Grange Hill 25th or 20th anniversary of the show. We met up at, I believe it was White City, and we did the show together. We had a good chat. We had a good catch up. We went and got some breakfast together. Yeah, and then I was very, over the years, I've been lucky to bump into him every now and again. And then in 2012, I suppose we really, really connected. That was at the late Terry C. Pat's art exhibition, and we just got on really well. We swapped numbers, obviously, social media, and we became very, very, close. We communicated quite regular, and we met at Grange Hill events, and he was just the most lovable, fun, honest man you could ever meet. He was a great man, and he was lucky enough, and I was lucky enough that he met my wife, and he always called her the missus. As the missus, he say, "How's my missus?" And she loved him. She loved him as well. She's taken the news just as bad as I have, really, regarding his passing. But yeah, he was just a really extraordinarily good soul, and there's not many, good souls in this world. But yeah, he was just delightful. Anybody that ever met George would never say a bad word about him, and they could never say a bad word about him because he was so lovable, he was so caring, he was so kind, he was so happy. And as my wife said, she's never going to see that smile or that chuckle again. So he's going to be extremely missed by everybody that knew him. And I'm very lucky that over the last 5 years, George and I have probably spoke once a month. And I fully understand his whole journey that he's had through the illness that's sadly sadly took him. So I've sort of understood everything that's going on, and we've communicated. Even when he's been in hospital, he sent a text saying, "I'm in hospital. I'll speak to you when I get out." And he was just a lovely, incredible human being, and he was a dear friend, and he's going to be extremely missed by myself and his family and everybody that sort of knew him, and any fans that have ever met him at the reunions, because he just interacted so well with everybody that he met, and not one person that I would know would ever say a bad word about him.
Yourself and I, we spoke the other day, and a lot of those things you've said there, you said to me, and you said that no one will say any sort of bad word about him, and everyone's going to say pretty much the same, and that is the case.
And it might sound boring to the listeners of the podcast, but he was just an amazing man. He was just so nice and so loving. He was just a beautiful soul.
Yeah. So, if I can ask you then, so what would be then your lasting memory of George?
So my lasting memory of him. I mean, I've got loads of memories of him, but my last memory was just I'm lucky to have been part of his life, and his friendship. That'd probably be my lasting memory is just the fact that he's just he's going to be in my heart for a long time. Just like the late Terry Sue Pat, they were just beautiful souls. And I had a conversation with him back in January, and just asked him how he was and everything. He said, I'm starting this new treatment, blah blah blah. I'm so looking forward to starting that. Once that's done, I'm safe to fly. I'm going to go to Australia, and then we're going to go and have that curry with Todd. And I said, look, we've been having this curry with Todd for the last 5 years. He said, no, I'll definitely have it. And then, because he never got the opportunity to meet my son, and he always used to say, "How's my boy? How's my boy? How's my boy doing?" And I said, "Yeah, your son's doing well, George." He wants to know where his birthday card and his maintenance money is. So it was always that sense of humour with the both of us, and I'm going to miss that from him, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, it's clear how much he meant to you. It really is. So I can only thank you for coming on and talking about him at this time, because it's clearly it's such a sad time for everyone. But thanks very much for coming on.
For those that don't know, his friends have been doing a Just Giving page, which hopefully you'll be able to put on the link to the show as well, to raise money for the staff and everybody that's looked after him over the time. So that'd be good if that is capable. Yeah, but you know what? As I said to you many times, Neil, not just on the podcast, but we've created our friendship. Grange Hill passed a group of brothers and sisters, and that's how I feel like I've lost another brother. And yeah, just feel like I've lost another brother, really. And it was devastating news to all. And I just know he's up there. Terry's probably joined him. They're probably sitting there talking about Tottenham. Yeah, that's probably the only bad thing about George, was he was a supporter. But other than that, he was an amazing guy. So he will be missed.
Yeah. Once again, thanks very much, Erkin.
No worries, pal.
I'll speak to you soon. Cheers.
No worries.
Thanks.
God bless.
Lisa York, who played Julie Marchant, has been sharing her memories of George.
My memories of George are not from Grange Hill, funny enough. He'd actually left before I'd even began. My memories are from school, actually. I'd met him at school. He'd already left there as well, but he'd come back working there somehow. But his brother Adam was still there, so I'd see him along the way. And I used to pretty much see him through Conti reunions, mainly, not Grange Hill ones. And then there was the few odd Grange Hill ones, and then obviously he'd know who I was through school. And somehow, between all that, we sort of clicked, and we would sort of text, and I obviously knew about his illness and stuff. He was quite open about it at the time, and we talk about that, and we grew fairly close. Just want to say the guy was the most genuine, unaffected, decent person you'd ever want to meet. Glad that I knew him. Glad he was part of my life. And rest in peace, George. Love you, man.
Okay, I've now been joined by Vincent Matthews, who played Jeremy Irvin. And now, Vinny, you weren't on the programme with George. So can you tell us how you got to know him?
Okay, well, as everyone knows, I was an Natalia Conti kid with Paul Rambler and Lisa York. Danny Cunningham. And there was one guy in the school that was just a mainstay. And I knew him, obviously, I knew him as Alan Hargreaves. And then I got to meet him, George Armstrong. And he was a mainstay in the school, and really kind of like a mentor to so many. He was just the humblest, nicest guy. Yeah. And so I got to know him, but I also met his brother at the same time, Adam Armstrong, that was also in Grange Hill for, I think he played two different characters over his tenure. But George was, I've known him for 44 years, as I've known his brother. His mother used to feed me, because they lived very close to the school when we was at Clapham. So George was just a friend, a mentor, an arm, a hug. away from you. And so I really got to know him as an individual, and also then as a friend.
Yeah. Okay. And so what would you say would be your first or your earliest memories of George?
Well, first is I'm meeting Alan Humphries.
Yeah.
That's the first thing you think of. But, within our school, there was quite a lot of well-known people that went through their own, fame is the wrong word, but infamy.
Right. Right, okay.
And that was George, but he didn't carry that weight on his shoulders.
Yeah.
He kind of, because he had a younger brother as well, he knew he had a big brother role. And I think that's how he came across to most of us.
Right.
That he was a big brother. And that's how he was treated. That's how he treated us. And so my first memories of him were learning to know him as a friend. And then obviously, because we ended up going to our fictional school together, we had a lot of things to share. He would guide you. And especially when he knew some of my storylines coming up, which I'm not sure I was supposed to tell him about, but anyway. He is someone to rebound off. And so when you ever talk to him, you never stood in front of him. He was always by your side with his arm around you.
Yeah.
And that's how you talk to him. It was, he's such an affable man.
Yeah.
And because he was like 5, 6 years older than me, to me, at my age, he was a man.
Yeah.
And he was kind of, I grew up with 3 older sisters. So to have an older brother was a really nurturing aspect of just the love that George had, or the graciousness that man held. Right. So he was, we went beyond Grange Hill together.
Yeah.
And so the last time I ever met him, with the photo I put up on his page, was that was the last time I saw him.
Right.
But the one thing we discussed in that meeting was he was showing me photos of his nephews, which are Zach and Seb.
Yeah.
That's the type of that's what we wanted to talk about. We weren't there, even though we was at a Grange Hill event, we were just catching up together as friends.
Yeah.
And so let me please give a shout out to his wife, for his sister-in-law Keris as well, obviously Adam. That's how we kind of treated each other. Just mates.
Yeah. You've said there, your friendship obviously was from school, and you put the picture up. Did you see him often?
No, no. You don't see each other often, but when we did meet each other, you went back.
Yeah.
We share so many friends in common. And obviously the outpouring of love and some of the postings I've seen, a lot of them are my friends. Some of them are my stage school friends. A lot of them are also my Grange Hill friends. So you live 2 parallel lives with that. We both recognise that you can't escape Grange Hill.
Yeah.
But then you can't escape friendship either. And the last time I saw him, we was apart from when the photo was taken, I was once again Urka Mustafa. He organised an event for a kid that was had cancer, and he was trying to raise money for him. And so we set up an event in Leicester Square at a nightclub there.
Right. And
I was just kicking back in a bit of time, and so I was just in this like souvenir shop in Leicester Square, and I kind of out the corner of my eye, someone was standing there looking at me. There's only when I looked up, it was George, just standing there waiting for me to recognise him. And as soon as I looked up and clocked him, once again, straight in with the hugs, straight in with the banter, straight in with how I won't swear.
Yeah.
How you doing, buddy? How you doing?
Yeah.
And so the years of not seeing each other, and I had seen him over those years, but it's just like click, you're back in it.
Yeah.
And there's your mate, but now we were more equals because the age differential wasn't there as much as when you're children.
Yeah.
And so now we're peers, and then we had a great night that evening, a beautiful evening, with a lot of other cast members, and just stand behind George. He takes all the hugs, then I stand in the back and get high fives. So that relationship.
Brilliant. So then, what would you say, Vinny? What would your lasting memory of George be?
He was always there when you needed him.
Yeah.
Say he was such an unselfish person. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure everyone else has told you that. He was the one, he's a big fella, man, larger than life. So, it's not so you gravitated towards him, but you were in his grasp. So the fondness I would take, and so, there was a quote that his brother gave when he put his posting up, and he was saying that he's going to have a JD, even though he's once again not a drinker, he was going to have a JD and Coke last weekend.
Yeah.
But after trying to get over the initial grief, he said, "What I will remember are the thousands of laughs and joy." And that's what I'm taking as well. There were thousands of laughs and there was thousands of moments of joy, just because we were in close proximity for many years. Yeah. I was at school for 6 years with him. I was only in Grange Hill for 2 seasons. Our friendship has continued over this. What I think was it? Over 2 generations. A generation is every 20 years. So I've had more than 2 generations of friendship with that man, and his brother as well. They were big parts of our school. They were big parts of me growing up. They were big parts of me keeping my feet on the ground when the absurdity of Grange Hill was swirling around you.
Yeah.
So it's so important that you have people like him in your life. And hopefully I took that from him, stole a bit of his heart, kept in mind, so I could be that to the next generation coming up behind me. So you learn from your peers.
Yeah. Well, it's clear how much he meant to you. So thank you so much for coming on.
I'm glad you asked me.
No, not
because I've got nothing but just adoration for what his friendship and his experience helped me through.
Yeah.
So George, even in death, mate, still looking up to you.
Well, once again, Vinny, thank you so much for coming on. It's been really nice hearing you talk about his memories. Thank you so much. Cheers.
Fiona Lee Fraser, who played Laura Regan, has sent us this message about George.
I was only able to meet George Armstrong a couple of times at Grange Hill reunions, but he was just such a lovely guy off screen, and really lovely when I used to watch him in the early days of Grange Hill alongside Todd, and just my sympathies go out to his family, because it will just be such a huge loss for them, and I know it's a very huge loss for the Grange Hill community. So very, very sad to hear that he's passed.
I've now been joined by Paul McCarthy, who played Anthony Underwood and Tommy Watson. Now, Paul, you worked quite a lot with George. Obviously, you did 3 series of Grange Hill with him, and then you did all 3 series of Tucker's Luck as well. But if you can tell us, what are your first memories of George?
First memories of George are that he was just George, to be honest. He was just the problem with trying to think of a first memory of George is that I've known him for so many years and watched him go from, I think I was 13 when I went to Grange Hill, so he must have been 15.
Right.
So we were both little kids. I mean, one of the memories that I've got is actually from the show of him knocking on the door with Terry Supat, bless him, you know, and asking if Tucker was coming to school or whatever, and that tiny little boy, and like, you know, and then seeing him as the man, you know. So it's a bit. I haven't really got a lot of first memories of George. I remember him always being a really sort of a good soul.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? He was always a good soul. He always had a smile. He was always jolly. And he was, you know, I mean, I can only give you a blanket of throughout his life because it never changed. You know, for instance, when I passed my test when we were doing Tucker's Luck, just before we started the first season of Tucker's Luck, I passed my driving test, and I was going to drive to White City to the rehearsal rooms or the studio or whatever. And I was like, oh, and I was talking to George, and I said, oh God, I'm really frightened because and we must have already started because I was talking to him in wherever it was, rehearsal or some point. And I said, I'm really frightened. You know, I don't know the way. What if I get lost? I said, I actually tried to drive to White City from Walthamstow, which is probably about 25 miles, if that. Right. And I did 95 miles, and I never actually got out of Highbury in Islington. Just because I got lost everywhere, and I was and I panicked and I was freaking and everything. And he went, well, look, Bubs, because obviously Bubs, it was Bubbles was my nickname. Right. And he said, like, what I'll do, I'll meet you at King's Cross. You know how to get there? So I said, yeah, I can get to King's Cross. He said, I'll meet you at King's Cross, and you can follow me in. So I used to follow him in, but I followed him in every day. After that, I just used to follow him in every day. And it was a bit. It must have been a bit annoying for him because the first day he waited outside King's Cross, I crashed into the back of his car.
No way.
And it was really, you know, I didn't. I had an old 1966 Renault Caravelle, which is it looks like a Thunderbird, beautiful old vehicle, lovely little car, and completely stove the front of mine in because it was an old, you know, it was old, and he had a big old Mercedes. And not a mark on his, and he got out of the car. Now I just crashed into him, got out of the car, laughed, and went, "Oh, Bubs, what are you doing?" Had a little chuckle about it. I'm like, "Oh no, look, I'm really sorry, George. Is there any damage to your car?" He's like, "Don't worry about that." He said, "Oh, look at the state of yours," and he was, you know, and that's what he was like. He just nothing. And I don't think anything ever fazed him. I mean, even when I spoke to him about when he got ill, I had this really strong optimism from him in his voice, the way he acted, the way he handled himself was always optimistic. It was never ever. I never had a down time with him, to be honest. No. It was. I mean, obviously there were some moments when we were both like, "Oh, this is a nightmare." What the, you know what I mean? But he was always just full of life and energy, and the man never stopped smiling. And you always felt, I think I put a thing on Facebook about this. You always felt like he was your mate.
Yeah.
Him and Terry had that in common. Do you know what I mean? Both of them made you feel like you were loved.
Yeah.
And George did that. George had that quality about him as well. Always smile, always laughing. He just wouldn't stop bloody laughing. It was infectious, annoying. And you know, sometimes you'd be like, George, for sake, stop laughing. But he was a very bubbly, happy person. Outwardly, inwardly, I can't. You know, you know, inwardly, I don't know. But I would imagine that you couldn't feign that kind of happiness.
No,
you know,
just
a good soul, just a good soul.
Yeah.
You know, it's tragic that George has gone now because we lost Terry. The Tucker's Luck people, you know, there was Peter McNamara and Peter Childs, who played George's dad in Tucker's Luck, sadly not with us anymore. And it's kind of really horrible to think that, you know, these colleagues, friends, family are just you know, not with us anymore. You know, so it's a real tragedy, and he will be greatly missed. Yeah, greatly missed by a lot of people. I haven't seen him for ages. Last time I saw him was 2016. I spoke to him a few times on the phone. I contacted him and, like, you know, sent him a text saying, look, I know what's going on and blah, blah, blah. You know, I'm going to keep that private. And he'd get back to me, and he'd always have an optimistic outlook.
Yeah.
You know, which is great. You know, which is great.
Yeah.
But stories, you know, he was just supportive of me when I was going through some bad times in Tucker's Luck. He was always supportive. He put me straight, you know.
Right. Yeah.
Because I obviously you said I was in the 3 seasons of Tucker's Luck. I did 2. I should have done the 3. To be honest with you, I should have done the 3, but it was only my stupid pride that got in the way of. And he would try and put me straight, and you know, and I wouldn't listen. But he was kind of like my guiding light throughout the whole thing when I was having a problem. You know.
But can I just ask then? So, you know, you did quite a bit with George. Have you got any particular favourite scenes, storylines, stuff that you did with him when you were filming?
Not really. All of it was great. I loved him doing his judo thing and the fighting and all that. That was fun. But one thing that I can remember years and years ago, it was in Grange Hill, was we were on the boat going to where was it? I can't remember. We did the French trip.
Yeah, going to. Is this where you're smuggled on the coach? Is that one?
Yeah, that harebrained scheme. And the idea, we all had to walk down the stairs. I wasn't in that scene because obviously I was hidden in the coach. They all had to walk off the boat down the stairs, and there was these big iron steps going all the way down. And there was a platform where you would get off on ground level. But loads of people just decided they were going to go past ground level and start going under like that. And of course, it looked really funny because they were all walking under the concrete, like people just disappearing under the concrete. So George saw this and waved like mad. Went, "Oh no! Guess what? They've all gone down like that." And you know, so basically, he was cutting the tape. They were filming. He was cutting the tape. Boy, did he get told off for that?
Did he?
yeah. Because I mean, on the camera, they probably wouldn't have noticed it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he, you know, he was kind of going, "Oh no, it's all gone wrong," like that. I think, you know. And I mean, he was a kid. He was what? I don't know what season was that. That must have been season 3. So I'd have been about 15. So he'd have been about 15, 16, 16, 17, something like that. So he was only a kid, so he didn't know, you know. And that was one of the things I remember about him. What else? I remember him laughing at me all the time when I had to paint thrown at me. He just could not stop laughing at me in Tucker's Luck. He just did not stop, and he ribbed me for ages about it. And when all the shit came out of the pipe and everything and landed all over me, he loved all that. He loved all that stuff
because it wasn't him.
Because it wasn't him, exactly, he just didn't seem phased by anything. No. Do you know what I mean? And we were all, you know, the acting side of it, and you know, we just chucked ourselves in and did the job. But the only thing I can say about George is that he was always happy, right? He always had a smile on his face. He was always a positive influence.
Yeah.
And he was just a bloody lovely person.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's all I can give you, really, because he just was, you know, and he's going to be, you know, and you know, the tributes that came in on Facebook, I did read a few of them, and everybody, you know, there were people saying, "Oh yeah, always had time to come and say hello. What lovely, what a lovely person, you know, always, you know, wasn't," and that is just so George, you know. It was just, there's no side, there's no kind of alter ego, there's no kind of, you know, it didn't look like he was that bothered about much. No. He just got on with it, did the job, got on with it, you know, and he was just a good guy. And you know, when he told me when I first found out he was ill, I was like, and he was like, "Oh well, you know, I've been ill, I've you know, but I'm out. I'm over it now. It's all good. We're through it and everything." And I was like, why haven't you told me this? Why, you know, I'm your friend. I need to know this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and if anybody in the show is listening to this, you know, and if we're close, if we're good friends, please tell me, because I don't want to hear that you're not well. I want to be there and support, you know, they're my friend. Like if George, I said to him, I said, whatever you need, you know, you're my friend, mate. I don't want any of that. You know. So yeah, any of you lot, don't keep it to yourself. It's not a private matter. It's you know, you're public property. You belong to us.
Yeah. Yeah. I just want to share one of you just mentioned some of the things that you read online about George, and I love reading this one, and I think it shows not only the type of person he was, but also that you know how good an actor he was, because someone put something like obviously people putting on about how, you know, happy he was and positive and all, like you've said. But someone said he was so good at playing a world-weary character in Tucker's Luck. You know, he had that about him, and I just thought it just shows you how good an actor he was to be able to do that when he wasn't that type of person. I just think that was a really nice thing to do. One other thing I want to ask you about, Paul, because I didn't know about this when I interviewed you the first time. But not only were you in Grange Hill and Tucker's Luck with George, but you were also in Aladdin and the 40 Thieves, the children BBC pantomime.
God.
And do you know
with
what?
George.
We're with George. George is in it. Todd's in it. But also the cast is amazing. It was all like the people who were on children's BBC as well. So it was all like Kenneth Williams, Sarah Green, and I just think for someone like yourself and George, you were young actors at the time, to suddenly like be surrounded by like the you know, all these stars, and to just get on with it as well.
It was great. It was good fun. We there was lots, as you say. I think I met Floella Benjamin in that. Was she in that?
Yeah, she was. Yeah, she was the genie.
Yeah, and she was lovely. She was great. And yeah, they just, you know, it was great fun.
But it was different.
I mean, we didn't have a lot to do in it. Todd knows.
But you had a bit of dancing to do in it, didn't you? Like it was a little bit different that way. Like singing and dancing with Gary Wilmot and Brian Truman and people like that.
Did George dance in it?
Yeah. You were the thieves, weren't you? So like you were all doing your singing and dancing, but anyway, but yeah. So I just wanted to mention that. So finally, then, Paul, what would be your lasting memory of George?
Just that infectious positivity and smile, and just it was like love. That's all I can say. It was like love just oozed out of him. Yeah. It was just like every pore in his body oozed love. And I just want to send condolences to his family. You know, because he will be, I'm going to well up here. He will be greatly missed, because he was such a positive, lovely, beautiful human being. And it's like, you know, like Peter Charles, like Terry, like Peter
McNamara.
Passmore. Yeah. Peter McNamara. Sorry about that. Yeah. You know, all lovely people, and should still be here, and should still be punching, and still be with us. Yeah. And it's a bloody travesty that they're not.
Yeah. Well, Paul, thank you so much for coming on. I know it's all a bit raw, like, but it's really nice hearing you talking about George in such a positive way, and hear your memories of him. So thank you so much for coming on. Thanks very much.
Thank you. No worries.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. Lots of love.
Michael Sylvester from Grange Hill Gold has very kindly shared this clip of George speaking in April 2018 at a Grange Hill 40th anniversary event, where he talks about what the Grange Hill family means to him.
With his pal, who's here today, is a friend. You know, you'll greet each other with a hug, because it's that family atmosphere that we developed there, and everybody was always talking and supportive and fun and enjoying themselves. And I think that's what made Grange Hill the thing it was, is the characters that you saw on screen, the relationships were good off the screen, which allowed us to have the fun, do the acting stuff, but still enjoy working together, whether it was good or bad. If you think back to your school, you'll always look fondly back at your best friend at school. My best friend at school, because we were 14, I was at school in Grange Hill, was Todd. Yeah. You know, and Terry, and Paul. Those are relationships that just carry on at the time, and this is the thing, you know, you think about the characters and who was friends with who on the series. Probably my best friend at the time when we were actually filming Grange Hill was Robert Craig Morgan. Right. And Robert and I used to do silly films together when we were off sets, and play golf and all those sorts of things that you do. So, yeah, lifelong friends. Always consider those sort of people. If we see each other, the bond is always still there. You know, I hadn't seen Todd for 18 years until I saw him in Panto this year. We sat in the pub for an hour and a half afterwards, having a really good friends chat.
It's
like we've never been.
friendship.
Yeah, like we've not seen each other last week. So really good.
Yeah.
I made some fantastic friends. It was a wonderful experience. Maybe because we were the groundbreakers, it has that different feel, because we know we started something that was fairly unique in terms of children's television. So from that point of view, Grange Hill was a great experience for me, and as I say, made some great friends and learnt a lot, and I think that was key. When they finished the series back in 2008, 30 years on, or 31 series later, you kind of go, how did it run that long? But again, a mark of the work that went into the show from the very beginning all the way to the end is it remained popular, it remained successful as the characters kept growing. You know, very much when we do these type of reunions, it's the early years, you know. But even the actors who came after us and long after us and all the way to the end all made their mark on a show that is probably will be the longest running children's drama there ever was. And that's something to be quite proud of.
As Erkan Mustafa mentioned, George's friends are raising money for the nurses of Addenbrooke's Hospital who looked after and cared for George. If anyone would like to donate to this fund, you can do so at www.justgiving.com/crowdfunding/Andy-Scarpellis, and Scarpellis is spelled Skarpellis. I would like to thank everyone who has contributed to this episode, and we send all of our love and thoughts to George's family and friends at this sad time.